Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name is Andrew Barber. I'm a senior contributing editor here at eSchool News, and I'll be the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Fuel Education. And today we're going to discuss career and technical education, in particular how FuelEd's blended CTE courses can expand options for students and prepare them for the exams that they're going to need to earn industry certifications. And as part of that, we're also going to view a live demo of FuelEd's Career Readiness Pathways course. Now, before I hand things over to our speaker for today, let me just take a few minutes to discuss the console that we'll be using today and a couple of other items. First, today's event will be recorded. Over the next day or so, you'll receive an email from us that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you're also going to be able to download a PDF of the slides from that same email. And second, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any point during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into that Q&A panel and hit the submit button. I think we're going to have probably 15 minutes or so at the end when our speaker can address your questions. We also have a chat function, which you can launch. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, that's the blue group chat. It's blue group chat icon down at the bottom of your screen there. Please use chat to talk among yourselves. Start a conversation with your colleagues about your own CTE approach. Or you can use it to contact me or the eSchool News team if you have any technical problems. But I do have one favor to ask of you. Please don't use the group chat to ask our panelist questions. She's simply not going to have time while she's giving the presentation to monitor the chat. So if you have a question for her, please use the Q&A panel instead. And with that out of the way, let me now introduce you to today's speaker. Kacy Stith is the CTE Portfolio Manager at Fuel Education. She has a bachelor's in marketing and has worked in the educational industry for the past 17 years, focusing on secondary disciplines. And in our conversations leading up to today's webinar, it's very obvious to me that Kacy is passionate about the potential for blended CTE programs to help reach and inspire students. Welcome, Stacey. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. As Andrew said, I am a portfolio manager at Fuel Education, and today I'd like to share with you details on one of our newer solutions, Career Readiness Pathways. Just a few points about Fuel Education before we get started. Our mission here at Fuel Education is to partner with you to fuel personalized learning and transform the education experience. A couple of fast facts about us. We are dedicated to serving school districts pre-K through 12th grade. We've partnered with more than 2,000 districts across the country, delivered millions of online courses, and trained more than 5,000 teachers. Outside of our Career Readiness Pathways solution, FuelEd has a broad range of high-quality solutions, including core courses, credit recovery, and world languages. Now let's dive into the topic of the day, career and technical education. So as we know, the economic landscape is changing. What's happening is there's a skills gap that we need to be prepared to fill. Healthcare occupations is one of the fastest growing industries, and many of those jobs require an associate's degree or less. A recent report finds that 80% of employers are having trouble filling jobs. So what can we do to prepare our high school students to meet that economic demand? When we were crafting Career Readiness Pathways here at Fuel Education, we were trying to think of all of the different facets of what a successful CTE program looks like. So we were asking, how can we help students explore what they want to do, like figure out what they are naturally good at or might naturally be interested in? How do we then help them develop the skills they need to be successful? So once they've explored industries and they have a path they might be curious about taking, how do we deliver those progression of courses, the skills and academics to help them be successful in that industry? And then if there is a recommended certification at the end, how do we help them prepare for that exam? How do we help them with those soft skills, the business skills, right? Like teamwork and leadership. And then sometimes students in different states might take those work keys exams. Successfully passing those 3 work keys exams preps the student to be prepared to get the ACT National Career Readiness Certification. So how can we help students prepare to pass those exams? And that's how we developed Career Readiness Pathways. So if we look at the traditional online course offering, we see on the left, effectively it's a catalog full of exploratory and skills-based courses. And actually, field education has that as well. Our Career Readiness Pathways catalog has over 100 courses that include exploratory, skills-based, and certification test prep courses. What we've done here is we've taken that catalog and organized it into recommended pathways. So what happens when a student takes an exploratory course in healthcare and they find that they want to pursue a path toward becoming a medical assistant or nursing assistant? How do we help them get there? So at FuelEd, our recommended pathways start with that foundational exploration, understanding what you might be good at, what you might be interested in, taking it the next step for a progression of courses to help prepare the student to get those skills, and then caps the pathway with a certification test preparation. This year, we have a total of 6 clusters, 6 of the most popular clusters nationwide, and there are a variety of pathways underneath each. Again, our clusters and pathways have been organized from our catalog, and they are recommendations. If you need a place to start, you can utilize one of our recommended pathways, or you can simply pick and choose individual courses to fill gaps in your own existing pathways. Last year, we had 4 career clusters you see there in blue and a variety of pathways underneath, but we were met with such great demand that we grew our catalog to tack on 2 more popular clusters, agriculture and hospitality and tourism, and then we added on more pathways where we could. So not only did we add on pathways to our existing clusters, but certainly we have new pathways for those new clusters. Now I want to take a second and talk about blended learning. Oftentimes when I talk with districts, there is an immediate misunderstanding of how blended learning could really work for CTE or how an online course could work for CTE. Well, first, we understand that across all disciplines and all grades, including post-secondary, access to online courses is growing. In 2019, for example, there's a projected estimate that 50% of high school courses will be delivered online. Certainly, I'm sure that that will be either a catalog expansion or an option for those students, but the growth and the demand for that flexibility is growing. And then in the higher education space, I think maybe they higher ed had a leg up on online courses sooner than K-12. It's projected that this year, half of all post-secondary students will take at least one online course. And then if we think of blended learning and the growth of online from the different learning environments at the bottom, there's homeschooled, virtual schools, online charter schools, and blended learning has exploded in growth. I have on this screen 4 models of blended learning, and actually one of the things I like about blended learning is that it is by definition undefined, right? So these 4 examples are merely starting off points to help you think about what would ultimately work best for your students and your classroom. I would love to hear examples of other blended learning environments that you have implemented, and we can share those out. So we have a rotation model where students, either in groups or individually, they rotate in like lab settings. And then we have a flex model where there's that online platform with face-to-face support and the schedules are fluid. Self-blending, this is pretty popular, where students are still at the physical school location, but they're taking a course online. And then we have enriched, where sometimes sometimes students go to a physical school, other times they're learning remotely. And if I'm thinking of career and technical education, there are aspects of learning where you are reading and you are doing assignments, right, and you are practicing, and then there's certainly a hands-on element. How can we implement blended learning options for career and technical education where you have students, maybe a group of students goes into a workshop or a lab twice a week, but the other days they're at home learning online. and then you're rotating those groups in and out. If you're in a rural district and you have to bus groups of students into the nearest city to do that hands-on practice, can they be bused in groups where certain days, certain students go to the lab to do that practice, but other days they're at home learning? This is another example of how Career Readiness Pathways is flexible to meet your individual district's needs. So on the far left, we have that comprehensive pathway. Our recommended pathways take about 3 to 4 years. We're assuming that a student might take 1 or 2 semesters of a course each year, and that starts at 9th grade and caps with the certification test prep in 12th grade. There's also a second option, those accelerated pathways, where for several of our pathways, we've condensed the amount of courses a student would need to take. We understand not only do students change their minds, but maybe they've entered your CTE program later on in their high school experience, right? Like maybe around 11th grade. They could take a condensed amount of courses and that certification test prep and still be prepared to pass the exam. Another option is to disable the pathways completely. This is that short track certification option. In our catalog, we have a variety of courses. Top of mind, we have Microsoft Office 365, Adobe courses, and CompTIA. Those are single semester courses. CompTIA is about a year long each, where if you have a group of unmotivated students or you have a group of dropout prevention, students can take these courses and see results immediately. It's very motivating, and it's a relevant certification that's industry recognized that students can put on their resume. Lastly, you could just focus our catalogs as electives, so over 100 electives to help students explore what they want to do. If they're not interested in taking a specific career path, they can just explore different industry options and take what's right for them. Now I'd like to do a little deeper dive into our recommended pathways courses and our recommended certifications. First, we have Business Management Administration. You'll see the 3 pathways listed at the top, and you'll see our recommended base and advanced credentials. I say recommended because the pathways we've developed are for the purpose of the student being prepared to pass the credential we recommend. But if your state or district prefers a different certification, that's fine too. You'll see the courses at the bottom, and one thing I want to point out here, across all 3 pathways, the first 5 or 6 courses are the same across all 3. Not only are those strong foundational courses for the cluster, but students change their minds. So a student might think they want to go down an accounting pathway, and they complete general accounting too, and think there is no way I want to take advanced accounting. I'm not right for this. They can pop on over to the general management pathway without having lost any time. Here for health science, you'll see our 5 recommended pathways and the credentials we recommend for each. You'll notice the last pathway on the far right, sports medicine. We do not have any recommended base or advanced credentials. That's because as we were looking to recommend credentials, we were looking for high quality, nationwide, industry recognized certifications that can help students whether they're applying to go to college or applying for a job. In sports medicine, we couldn't find a nationwide recommendation, so this would be ideal for a program of study where a student is taking some courses in high school with the intent of completing that pathway in college. Next, we have our information technology cluster. You'll see there's 3 pathways here, and I'm just going to pop to the next slide. There's 4 additional pathways there. Going back to this first slide, on the far left, our Information Support and Services pathway is based off of the CompTIA A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certification. You'll notice that we have the sequence of courses at the bottom. A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, they are each effectively year-long courses. So there's 2 single semesters taken consecutively to be prepared to pass that exam. I also want to make a point on several of our programming pathways, Java, Python, and on this next page here, C++ and HTML5. We recommend a project portfolio. That's because when we were thinking of what could help a student be successful in gaining employment, in terms of programming languages, you could have a certification that says that you as a student are certified that you know Python programming. But if you're in an interview situation, more than likely the employer is going to want to see proof of your coding work, not necessarily a certification only. So we thought it would be most impactful for the student to have a portfolio of their coding examples to be able to show a potential employer. Next, we have our manufacturing cluster, where we have 2 pathways listed here. And again, you'll see the credentials noted. In some cases, like manufacturing, we don't have practice exams, but by virtue of the student successfully completing the pathway we recommend, they're naturally prepared to pass the certification we recommend. Next, we have one of our newer clusters, hospitality and tourism, and you'll see these paths here. And lastly, agriculture with these paths. Again, a note on the credentials, if we couldn't identify a nationwide industry-recognized credential, we don't recommend one. It is certainly possible that credentials could be required at a state or local or regional level. Now I would like to dive into a live demo here. I preloaded the assignment to save everyone on the call with the login process. Let's hope it has not kicked me out. This is an example lab assignment from our CompTIA A+ Computer Management 1 course. Chapter 1, Lab 1, the student is identifying PC ports and connectors. The reason I like this lab assignment is not only is it interactive, but it includes a variety of supports to help the student. I've turned off my audio, but there you can choose to turn the audio on where there is a narrator who's effectively reading the instructions. So the point here is to take this connector and drag it to the correct port. I'm going to guess that this purple connector goes to the purple port. And then you'll see it's correct, and it shows a real photo, or image rather, of the port, or the connector being correctly put in the port. Next, I need to drag this green connector somewhere. For the purposes of the webinar, I'm going to put it in the wrong place. I tried to drag it to the wrong port, and the assignment is telling me that it's incorrect. I should click the X and try again. But it's also telling me that there is a Show Me feature if I really need help. If I click on the Show Me button, it pops up a video resource. There's some audio overlay, but effectively what you will see is an actual person taking that connector and putting it in the correct port. And this Show Me feature is available for each drag and drop. So it's a nice way to see that real-world hands-on element in an online environment. And now I got it correct. All right, I'll save us all the rest of the assignment. Close out this live stream here. I also wanted to talk about some wraparound services that Fuel Education offers in conjunction with our catalog. These are all available separately and also separate of the catalog. First, we have career exploration, kind of one of the first points of helping students explore what they want to do. Our career exploration platform is available in English and Spanish. I've highlighted that feature because I actually really like it in the course. There is a button in the course that says Español, and you can click it and it will immediately change the course into Spanish. So there's no purchasing of an English or Spanish version. There's an easy toggle right there. Our career exploration course does not require instruction. It's supplemental, and it helps students take a variety of self-assessments to help them figure out what they like to do. It helps students explore their options and match to related careers. They can watch video examples of possible interviews, research job fields, specific careers, colleges that are great for those types of careers, and help students prepare resumes. The content in our career exploration platform is updated annually. The next two services, the next one is business skills development, so building on that, those soft skills like teamwork and leadership, right? So At your district or school, you might have a career and technical student organization set up, a CTSO. If you're not familiar with CTSOs, then a popular example is DECA or FFA. Our business skills curriculum works best in conjunction with a CTSO. The purpose of a CTSO is to gather a group of students. Oftentimes they travel to do competitions, and it helps them build on those business skills like teamwork and leadership. You can also choose to just use the soft skills curriculum standalone without the CTSO. We also have exam preparation for the National Career Readiness Certification. That is a workforce readiness certification provided by ACT. And effectively what that exam prep is helping the students pass the 3 work keys exams: reading comprehension, critical reading, and applied mathematics. And I apologize for that typo there. There should be a space. Lastly, this is a completely free resource we would offer to you if you do not have an existing CTSO, but you're interested in starting your own chapter. Fuel Education would be more than happy to make a connection with you to Skills USA to get that process started. If you are interested in that, please let us know, and we will work on getting that done for you. So to recap, Career Readiness Pathways is a comprehensive, all-inclusive CTE program that's flexible enough for you to pick apart to meet your needs. We help students explore what they want to do, give them that progression of skills to help them get there. Includes pathway certification test prep and workforce readiness test prep, as well as that strong soft skills development. You can access a variety of resources on our Career Readiness Pathways catalog on our website. If you go to fueleducation.com, click on Resources, and access Career and College Readiness, you will see a variety of case studies, an implementation guide, a deeper dive brochure that helps explain all of the details of the program, and that's where you can visit there. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Andrew, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Kacy, for a really excellent presentation. And it has prompted quite a few questions to come in from the audience. So why don't we spend some time looking at those? And the first question comes from Teresa, and it is, how does Fuel Ed work with ODE-approved CTE programs of study?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Well, it is an acronym that I personally am not familiar with. It is ODE, approved CTE programs of study, ODE. Are you familiar with ODE?
I am not. I'm not familiar with that acronym.
Okay. All right. Well, Teresa, what we'll do is we will contact you, we'll write to you via email and get you some answers to that one. But why don't we move on to the next question anyway. Kacy, you did mention that there was English and Spanish available during the course, during the exploration, for the exploration of possible careers. Are any of the other courses available in Spanish? Is that something that's possible to get?
That's a great question. No, the courses in our Career Readiness Pathways catalog are only available in English. There are some supports, but not supports meant for English language learners. Our career exploration platform is the only tool we have available in English and Spanish.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And I know that we have a question now from Pamela, and you did spend some time talking about the certifications and how that worked with the programs. Could you talk a little bit further about how you go about identifying and validating the industry certifications and their alignment to workforce needs and pathways? And, are these certifications more than an end of course? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when we were researching the clusters, first, we chose our career clusters based on the popularity because we wanted to be able to affect the largest student population available. And then based on those clusters, we looked at pathways that were in high demand. And from there, we looked at possible certifications that are also industry recognized or what we might consider the gold standard. And in some of our clusters, business management is a cluster that I like to reference. And actually, let me go to that slide. We recommend NOCTI and ASK credentials. Both NOCTI and ASK are available nationwide, and they are high-quality exams that require knowledge and skills to pass, and that's why we recommend them. However, I know, especially speaking with certain districts in certain states might not necessarily recognize or place much emphasis on NOCTI, but instead they have their own state or regional certification. I would bet that our sequence of courses or the courses in our catalog overall would still help the student get to the point where they might be prepared to pass a regional certification. But again, our focus was on providing nationwide recommendations for industry-recognized credentials. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. I think it does. Thank you very much. And I do actually want to come back to that earlier question, which I asked. And I think it's ODE refers to either Ohio or Oregon's Department of Education, which sort of opens up a broader question is, in terms of working with individual states, for instance, like either Oregon or Ohio Department of Education approved programs, how does Fuel Ed work with these individual state programs?
That's a great question. So let's talk about these programs from the sense of Perkins funding. So there is the Perkins grant, the federal Perkins funding, has a variety of requirements. Pathways or programs of study are included within those requirements, as are access to certifications. But then the federal Perkins allows individual states to overlay their own additional requirements for state Perkins funding. And almost every state I've spoken with has done that. They've overlaid their own requirements. And those requirements might be a focus on their own state-specific pathways that affect regional economic demand. So with our nationwide recommended pathways, the purpose of the pathway is to prepare students for the certifications we recommend. They are not necessarily aligned to any specific state pathway. Every state has different pathways with different courses. However, I would say with a catalog of over 100 online courses, there's a good chance that you can build your own state-specific pathway based on the options that we provide. I also know, especially in Ohio, to get approved pathways, it's actually at the institution level, and you need to have collaboration. I think I spoke with a school that recently collaborated with Penta, and that's specific to Ohio. So whereas we might have a strong curriculum that can aid you in getting to those approved pathways, it's ultimately at the institution level that you would seek approval.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I think that is exactly what Teresa was looking for. So I appreciate you coming back to that question. Let's move on to another question. And one is someone wanted to know how. You gave a short demonstration here, but how does someone get a personalized demonstration of the CTE courses for their school or their district? How can they arrange that?
Sure. Yes. Actually, I believe we're using the Q&A chat. If you can put into the chat that you would like to have access to a demo account or see a demonstration of our CTE courses, and we will get that set up for you 100%.
Okay, great. And follow up on these, and I think you may have just touched on this just briefly before. Can you talked about the ability to use these as electives instead of, and that's a question that came in from the audience, asking you to maybe expand a little bit on the use of your courses as electives instead of full pathways. Is that a trend that you see a lot of in schools? Could you talk a little bit about how schools are making that choice?
Sure, yes. Ultimately, the district decides what credit or reporting structure each course and what course each student is set up in, right? And that largely has to do with funding. So you have ESSA funding, which traditionally is for those core disciplines. And then you have Perkins funding, which is traditionally for CTE. If a district is utilizing Perkins funding, they need to make sure they meet those Perkins requirements especially if they are going to mark that student as a CTE participant or concentrator or completer. In that case, they would want to make sure that the course or the pathway or program of study meets the requirements for their state Perkins funding. Outside of that, students take electives throughout their high school experience, and every single course in our Pathways catalog is appropriate for electives use. If they're using, excuse me, non-CTE funding and they don't need to report out on a CTE participant or concentrator, they can simply enroll students using these courses as electives.
Okay, all right. Well, while we're on the same subject of Perkins funding, we have a question from Kevin, who's asking about what must a small charter school do in order to attain or maintain a Perkins grant? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My best recommendation is to contact your state's Department of Education. Like I said before, there are federal guidelines, or I'm sorry, federal requirements to Perkins, but in almost every instance, each state has overlaid their own additional requirements. You should be able to find that on your Department of Education's website or find a contact for the CTE department. Definitely call them and see what the application process is.
Okay, all right. Now I have another question from Frank, and I hope I get get this acronym correctly. He's asking, I think, about compliance with XAPI, about the courses being an ability to track use patterns within the courses. Do you have that sort of analytic capability on the back end, and is that XAPI compliant?
I'm not sure if it's API compliant. I actually am not familiar with that acronym. However, our courses are integrated into our proprietary PEAK system that has extremely robust reporting. It shows when students log in and log out, the duration of their activities. Clearly it shows grades, and it shows if they're on track, behind, or struggling. Yes, it's a very robust reporting tool. Okay,
all right. Now, I also wanted to come back, if a school or a school district wants to offer some of these courses and doesn't necessarily have the faculty, does FuelEd provide certified teachers for each pathway?
We do. It varies. So across the country, we have a variety of instructors who have the appropriate state CTE credentials for a lot of our courses. We do not necessarily have 100% of the courses covered in 100% of the states. If you are interested in a specific pathway or cluster or course even, and want to find out if we have a CTE credentialed teacher, we can easily find that out for you. Alternatively, from an elective standpoint, I would say we probably have every course covered.
Okay. All right, great. Now, is it, another question that's come in from the audience, is it possible for these courses to be customized? So can a school district come to you and actually ask for specific changes to the course?
It depends on what the changes are. So you can hide units, you can shift units up and down and around. You can set a release set for units if you don't want students to get too far ahead in the course. You can also add in your own content. If you have videos you like or assignments that you prefer, you can do that. In terms of changing the content of the course, no. So if you don't like the way Unit 1 is taught, you can hide that unit and add your own Unit 1, but you couldn't change the physical content, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. And also about a question following up on someone who wants to maybe teach one of these courses. This is a question that's specific to someone who's asking about the state of South Carolina. How can someone get certified to teach one of these courses?
So again, with contacting the Department of Education, the requirements for CTE credentials for instructors vary state by state, and it also varies industry by industry. The best way first is to find out from the district or from the Department of Education what that CTE credential is required for that course, and then you can see about how you would go about getting that.
Okay, all right. Right, and now I'll shift gears a little bit. A question from Lindsay, who back at the beginning of your presentation, you put up a slide. In fact, maybe we can go back to it. It was a slide about the percentage of students in higher ed who are taking an online course. I think it was early on. I can't remember which one it was. If you remember it, maybe we could push it up there. But there it is. Aha, perfect. What they were asking is what the source of the data was for this, and then following on from that, could you explain if two-year colleges could benefit from the services and courses that you're offering?
As for the source, I believe it comes from the Insight Institute, the same source as this slide, or I'm sorry, Ambient Insight, but I can definitely confirm that. What was the second half of the question?
Yeah, it was talking about whether two-year colleges can benefit from the courses and services you're promoting. Is this something that you are aiming at high school, or is this something that is also pushing into colleges and community colleges and two-year college?
These courses are certainly appropriate for post-secondary options. However, Fuel Education only operates in the pre-K through 12th grade space. However, if there is a post-secondary institution who's interested, we can get them connected with someone.
Okay. All right, great. And we're going to now come back to, and if you've explained this once already, I apologize, but I think there's still some confusion about teacher licensure for CTE programs. And a follow-up was, what about teacher licensing for CTE programs of study connected to an established Perkins approved program of study? Does that make sense?
Well, the CTE credentialing for instructors is a state-by-state requirement. Yeah. And the states, so when we launched this product last year, we have a cadre of instructors, and we needed to see who had what appropriate certifications for a variety of states. We reached out to the specific state Department of Education, and we would say, okay, for this pathway or these courses we have, here's a description of the course, what CTE credential is required for that teacher of record. And they would give us that information, and we would check to see if we had a teacher with that credential, or if a teacher wanted to get that credential to be able to teach the course. So I would still say, even with Perkins requirements, it's still on the state to lay out the credentialing, and I would still contact the Department of Ed to see what's required.
Okay. All right. Now, you did do a screen share a little earlier, and I don't know if we dare try it again. Someone is wondering if you would be able to show anything from the learning analytics side that you capture. Is that something that you would be able to pull up, and if not, could you just describe a little bit more the kind of analytics that come from that are available?
Yes, so on that point, I am definitely a specialist on our CTE courses, but I am not a specialist on our PEAK office, and PEAK is that robust reporting tool that I was mentioning that shows those analytics in group students. However, if we can get that person's name, I know personally of several people who can do a PEAK demonstration or get you access to be able to show that to you. Okay,
all right. And while we are on the topic of contact people who might be able to help, if someone is interested in following up and contacting someone at Fuel Ed for more information about this product, should they get in touch with you? Is there another person? How should they go about expressing their interest and setting up a contact?
Sure. Well, first, if they know they're interested now, you can let us know through that Q&A, and we'll get you connected. Otherwise, you can visit our website, fueleducation.com, and chat with someone that will get you to the right person.
Okay. All right. Well, that's terrific. Well, I think I think we have run through the audience questions that have come in, so we're going to let everyone get out a little bit early today. You know, as we, let me just put us up to the last slide here. Sorry, let me just get there. And, you know, as we discussed before, there are a couple of questions that came in that there need to be some follow-up for. And if you did ask one of those questions, someone will definitely follow up to get you a more detailed answer if we couldn't provide one today. But that is everything we have for now. You know, I would encourage everyone to visit the Fuel Education website at the URL on the screen and to get more information about how Fuel Ed can help with CTE and blend courses. But other than that, I think this is a wrap for today. Before we all head out, I do want to thank Kacy Stith again for an excellent presentation. I would also like to thank Fuel Education for its support today. And one final reminder, we will be sending out an email to everyone who attended today when a recording of the webinar is ready. So thank you, and we will wrap it up right there. So this concludes today's webinar. Goodbye.